Today we are diving into one of the most famous takedowns of ego and snap judgments ever written. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It's a story that really gets you thinking about just how dangerous a first impression can be.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. This question, it's the absolute heart of the entire novel. What happens when the way you first size someone up isn't just a little bit off, but totally, completely, 100% backward? Well, this story is basically a masterclass in the fallout.
Okay, so to really get this story, we've got to jump back in time to early 19th century England. Now, this was a society with some seriously rigid rules, especially for women. For them, marriage wasn't just about finding the one. See, they couldn't really inherit property, so marriage was a huge deal. It was about survival, it was about your status, your whole future.
And now, let's meet the two people at the center of all this, who are practically designed to get on each other's nerves. First up, we've got Elizabeth Bennet. She's whip-smart, independent, and one of 5 sisters whose mom is, let's just say, a little obsessed with marrying them all off. And on the other side, we have the famously rich and smart, but also incredibly proud and kinda cold, Mr. Darcy.
And oh boy, do they clash. The very first time they meet, it basically sets the stage for every single misunderstanding that follows. This is really where the title of the book just springs to life. Yeah, it all kicks off with this one single moment. They're at a public ball, and Darcy, who thinks no one can hear him, just dismisses Elizabeth with this unbelievably arrogant line. And that one comment, that's the spark. It totally ignites Elizabeth's prejudice and solidifies her opinion of him as just this proud, awful guy.
And from that point on, things just snowballed. I mean, Elizabeth's bad opinion of him gets reinforced by this super charming soldier, Mr. Wickham, who spins this convincing sob story about how cruel Darcy is. And then, to make things worse, Darcy messes with the romance brewing between his best friend and Elizabeth's sweet sister, Jane. So in her eyes, he just looks worse and worse.
So all of this tension builds and builds until it leads to one of the most explosive, emotionally packed scenes in all of literature. This is the moment where his pride and her prejudice just collide, head on.
You could say this whole confrontation is kind of like a 3-act disaster. First, Darcy proposes, but it's maybe the most backhanded proposal ever. He tells her he loves her, but at the same time, he's insulting her family and her social status. So of course, Elizabeth just lets him have it. She furiously rejects him and lists all of his supposed crimes right to his face. But here's the real twist. A totally shocked Darcy writes her a letter explaining everything. And that letter, it changes everything. As Elizabeth reads it, she's forced to face this shocking new reality. She was wrong. Like, really wrong. About Wickham, about Darcy, about the whole situation. She realizes her own prejudice, her own pride in being a good judge of character had totally blinded her to the truth. And this is where her big transformation really begins. Now that the truth is out, both of our main characters start on this slow, kind of difficult journey. They each have to figure out how to see past their own biggest flaws, his pride and her prejudice, if they're ever going to have a shot at truly understanding each other.
And you know, that's really what makes this story so powerful. It's not just a will they or won't they kind of romance. It's really about personal growth. It's a story that argues, pretty convincingly, that you can't have a real connection with someone until you're willing to face your own weaknesses.
So just as they're both starting to see things differently, a huge crisis hits. Elizabeth's youngest sister, Lydia, does something reckless and runs off with that snake, Mr. Wickham. This was a huge scandal back then, an act that could totally ruin the reputation of the entire Bennet family. Forever.
And guess who steps in to fix this mess? Mr. Darcy. He secretly tracks them down, pays off all of Wickham's debts, and basically forces them to get married, saving the family's honor. And this is the ultimate proof that he's changed. He doesn't do it for recognition or pride, he does it simply because he loves Elizabeth.
So, this is the final payoff, right? You see Elizabeth's journey from prejudice to true realization, learning to look past the surface. And you see Darcy's journey from this suffocating pride to genuine humility, learning to act from a place of love instead of social superiority. It's pretty amazing. So, let's get to the big question. Why are we still talking about and loving a book that's over 200 years old? Well, it's because the lessons it teaches are just as important today as they were back then.
When you really boil it all down, the story leaves us with some powerful truths. It's a huge warning about how our own egos and snap judgments can totally fool us. It reminds us that people are always more complicated than they first seem. And maybe most importantly, it shows that even though social pressure is a real thing, true happiness and love require both people to be willing to grow and change.
And that's exactly why it endures. Think about it. In our world of social media, hot takes, and judging people in an instant, the main struggle of Pride and Prejudice feels so incredibly modern. We still let our egos get in the way, we still misunderstand people, and we definitely still struggle to see beyond the surface.
So, I'll just leave you with this final thought. The entire story hinges on someone being willing to completely reconsider a bad first impression. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Who in your life might deserve that same second look?